Hello, my friends, and welcome. I know you've been curious about what I've been doing and why I haven't been on IMVU recently, so I thought I'd share a little bit about the work I'm doing and introduce you to a new concept. So stay put. About the next 15 minutes, I will be talking through a bunch of slides, and I look forward to following up with you afterwards and hearing your questions. All right, so why do I do this? Why is this important? It's important because we have a lot of cascading effects and nobody really wants to pay any attention to it. I know it's hard. It really is hard. We have lives that we're trying to live. And for IMVU, myself included, we go there to get away from real life and the issues that we face. But the fact is, the issues don't go away. And there is nobody taking care of it, and nobody will take care of it until we come together and tell them to. That's the whole way government works. The first three words of the Constitution are "We the people." So we have climate change. We are resource overuse. There's scientists that saying that we're using almost 2 planets worth of resources. We have a culture of competition as opposed to cooperation, which is keeping us from working together. We have individuals focus instead of community focus. And at some point, it's all going to collapse, and it's coming closer and closer. And I know that's a downer, and this is the only slide that does this. The rest of the slides will be talking about how we fix it. And part of what we have to do is, we have to look at the fact that we are taking empathy away from our culture and from each other. We don't think about each other. We tend to think about ourselves. We tend to act entitled. And I'm not pointing fingers or saying you guys do. I'm just saying the world around us. And if you look around us, you see the same thing. We don't focus on community. We feel isolated. And alone, we feel powerless to do anything and change anything. But the overwhelming fear of reaching out and taking a risk to be in community stops us from moving forward. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. The other thing is we have a culture of dishonesty. And that's not, again, pointing fingers at you. You guys are great, but you on IMVU, you see it all the time. People are dishonest when they don't have to be. We focus on helping people realize that clear communication and honesty, transparency, all make us move better and work together. And as the dominoes fall, you can see that this is what we're looking at. All right, so a starting point, and this is going to seem a little non sequitur after the big global picture, but we think of the starting point as one good neighbor putting in some time and being persistent. And that will change the world, believe it or not. And we'll talk about why that is in the next few slides. Okay, so what is a good neighbor? A good neighbor is somebody who's caring, who's driven, who can see a bigger picture, who has buy-in, who's willing to be trained to think in a way that they are not thinking now that is actually somewhat counter to their cultural training. They're willing to do the work, and they're willing to be persistent and polite and respectful and move forward into making a change. So what I'm saying here, I mean, clearly is it starts with one person and can move forward into something much bigger after that. So what? So we talk a lot about pieces of the puzzle, and this will help you understand the whole neighbor thing. It says the neighbor is one piece of a puzzle, and it must it must include your experience, the person's experience, your perspective, the person's perspective, your filters, the person's filters, and most importantly, your brokenness. We're all broken because our culture is broken, our society is broken, and that experience of brokenness, along with your filters, your perspective, and your experience, inform the things that need to be part of the puzzle to form the picture of a human future. So a jigsaw puzzle, you start with the edges. And you need to understand that we don't know what we don't know. I mean, one person, me, I can drive this project all day long, but I'm also the roadblock that prevents it from going where it needs to go because I only know a very little bit. But you bring your piece of the puzzle, and now we together know a little bit more. We've got lots of pieces of the puzzle, and we find ways to share our stories, to see bigger pictures, to understand the brokenness and how to fix it. And suddenly you've got something really worthwhile going on. And that's the whole point of this, is to create a puzzle of our pieces and our brokenness so that we can see what a human future looks like. Because our human needs are not being met, and that's kind of the point of the work that I do, is to help us come together to find ways to make those pieces fit and make the future more human. Okay, so one of the things a good neighbor does is it goes to his neighborhood and he starts engaging people in conversations. Those conversations can bring, a lot of fear, of course. Could be some pushback, could be, people ignoring you, but that's part of the persistence. You build and build. But here's what we're really pushing for, is to have people start having conversations, usually breaking bread, and actually our organization with some other organizations go and throw block parties at people's neighborhoods once a month from May until September to help facilitate the conversations and get people to understand breaking bread together is the oldest form of starting to build a relationship. And this is all about relationship building. And the first thing we talk to the neighbors about when they're all kind of gathered nervously around and getting food and trying to act like they're comfortable being there is we start talking to them about the benefits of community gardening, of the fact that you probably have 6 or 7 people in your neighborhood that garden already, and that if you come together and people buy seed and people weed the gardens, you can expand that to start feeding the entire neighborhood. When you start feeding the entire neighborhood, you reduce the cost of food, you create food security, higher nutrition rates. There's a lot of benefits to that. But the most important benefit is it gets you talking to each other and gets you coming to a place where you can build relationships and you're working together. And from there, you can grow into other things like regular breaking bread and talking to each other about human things, talking about things that aren't working in your region, your culture, your community. You can find out who the medical professionals are. You guys can take CPR classes together. You can start doing skill sharing where somebody's a mechanic and somebody's a tax accountant, and you start sharing those skills. And you bring the kids together and start forming an inclusive yet diversive neighborhood to make sure that everyone has each other's backs and that the work is shared and therefore easier. This is nothing new. It's just quantifying it and teaching people how to do it. So keeping it focused on the human and away from political, away from religious, away from societal, keeping it focused on human. The thing that people need, food, water, housing, the feeling of safety, all of these are key human issues. And while they can be blamed on a lot of different things, the truth of the matter is it's the human that makes it important. And those are the human commonalities. So keep the conversations away from anything divisive or potentially divisive. It doesn't matter who the person voted for. As a person, they need food. As a person, they need water. As a person, they need reliable power. As a person, they need safety in their neighborhood. And coming together provides all of these things. So keep it simple, keep it on the human. And then once you get there and you have a connected neighborhood and people are actually talking about the needs, you can start looking at bigger needs. You can start looking at the community. And I will tell you that most cities don't have great water service. Most utilities do not provide great power. There is a global housing shortage and housing issue that's largely in play because of private equity and developers and the need for more money as opposed to providing affordable housing. In many of the large cities and even some of the smaller cities now, people who work in the cities can't live there because they can't afford to. It's happening everywhere. So by getting a connected neighborhood, you can then have a representative from that neighborhood, yes, using a democratic system, become part of a network communities representing your neighborhood and bringing their thoughts to the table. And the same process that we did in the neighborhood is now being mirrored on the network communities, but people have already had that experience, so they start working together and forming a larger grassroots network representing hundreds and thousands of people within the region. And that creates an opportunity for grassroots change. So if you wonder what I'm doing, this is it. This is where we focus our things, starting with the person and building from the ground up in a grassroots manner. So we start with a neighborhood, we get mini neighborhoods, and then we have a grassroots movement. And that grassroots movement can address any number of things that human beings need and are secondary in response to most corporations, most utilities, most governments to the financial opportunities provided by developers and corporations. And that can be changed all on this level because we, the people, still hold the power. We just have been programmed not to use it. All right, so why do this? Today we have a lot of confusion and inaction, a lot of fear, a lot of othering, meaning this group and that group is a problem. In the near future, we're going to have cascading consequences. Remember the dominoes falling? We're already seeing it. We're seeing floods. We're seeing food shortages. We're seeing growing regions change. We're seeing water tables disappear. It's all happening. It's going to continue to happen into the near future. And we have to plan for it. We have the technology today to resolve a lot of these, but we don't have the willpower. And the willpower will come from the grassroots networks. Now, we can do it in a neighborhood, we can do it in a region, we can do it in a state, we can do it in all 50 states and change the face of how things are done. And we don't have to have a revolution, we don't have to be violent, we just have to vote. And we have to put people into the parties, we have to get them integrated so that we choose better candidates and we're not always voting for the lesser of two evils. So in 5 or 10 years, we're going to have planned or unplanned reactions to the crises happening. We're already seeing what unplanned reactions are getting us. But if we get this together, it's generations work. We're planting seeds for trees that we will never sit under. But our children and their children will. And that's the reason to do the work. And if we plan right and we get people in and move and we form this out the way it's supposed to form, we've just formed a human future. And that's what we do. That's why we do it. Okay, so grassroots, I'm not going to go through a lot of the words on this, but I think everybody kind of sort of understands what grassroots is. Together, using a single focus and creating continuity so it's an ongoing thing and not just one march or one protest, we can change everything. We can change zoning, transportation, we can change the economy. And we just have to come together to do it. There's a lot of reasons not to. We'll get to that in just a second, and I will tell you how to overcome them. But life is about the choices we make. If we want a human future, we have a choice to be made. All right, so building community. We have a lot of misinformation and data being used improperly. And we have a lot of things that people use to stop a conversation that are basically a lot of, BS. But we're trained to use these techniques to stop any forward movement, which is why we have to do this on a very grassroots level. I like the Einstein quote, in theory and practice are the same, in practice they are not, and that is the life we live. We are alone in our heads. One of the first things we teach people is from Miguel Ruiz's The Four Agreements, is that don't take anything personally because it's not about you. And we're running out of time, so I'm going to keep moving on here. We have overwhelming realities on us all the time, and we need to realize that we can overcome it together, but we cannot overcome it alone. All right. We offer the edges of the puzzle. That's what I do, putting together the edge of the puzzle. I've been doing it for 20 years. We offer workshops, training, facilitation. We do the block parties, as I mentioned. We have discussion starters. We do outreach. We do ongoing support. You can read this. We don't ever charge for it. It's what we do. And this is some of the things we do: a podcast every Wednesday on YouTube called Tipping Points and Puzzle Pieces. We do meet and greets every Saturday for a cup of coffee. We do workshops every Saturday. We do events, and we have petitions for things like Power for All to start driving renewable energy and secure energy to the neighborhoods. And how do we manage to make the world a better place for people? We just decided to, and then we did the work. And that's what I'm in the middle of now. So here's who we are, and we're coming up on 15 minutes now, 15 minutes, 14, I'm sorry, I'm a little over. Learn what and why, go to our website, roseco.org. If you can, and not everybody can, support us at $20 a month on Patreon. It would be very helpful to us because we're self-funded. Create community, break bread, and embrace your humanity. Thank you for your time. We can go sit and talk about it.